Good morning, Simon.
Good morning, Bruce. How are you?
I'm quite well, thank you very much indeed for asking. How are you?
Glad to hear it. I am not too bad.
I mean, I've always said good morning. It could be good evening. It could be good night.
That's true.
It could be sleep tight. It could be anything.
That's true. This could be happening at any time of the day.
Yes.
It's only morning for us here in our little world.
And our world is... what's it called again?
Our world is called... Wouldn't it be great if we actually had a country named after it? Our world is called Factoraly. And Factoraly is a weekly podcast with me, Simon Wells.
And me, Bruce Fielding. Actually, that world is inhabited, isn't it, by Factoralites, which is you.
It is. They're all over the place, everywhere. I met a Factoralite the other day. I went round to Bruce's place and met one of his friends. And before I'd walked into the room, this chap said, "That's really weird. I recognise your voice from the podcast. And this is the first time I've seen you in the flesh." There are Factoralites everywhere, some of whom we know in person, some of whom we don't.
Yes. And if we don't yet, we may soon. You never know.
Indeed. So we are here to bring you fascinating, fun facts on a particular theme. We take mundane things and make them interesting.
So every week we take a new subject. This week's subject, chosen by our random subject generator, is something, is basically something fairly transparent, actually.
It's reasonably clear, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
Where one of them closes, another one opens.
I thought that was doors.
No, you're right, it is doors.
And we're talking about windows, because they know that, because they've read it on the title of the piece.
It's no surprise, is it really?
It's not. What may come as a surprise to you is that we're going to try not to talk about Microsoft very much.
Honestly, it's been so hard. We take a subject, we go away, we do our own research, we come back. I've had such a difficult job searching around on the internet for interesting facts about Windows without getting interesting facts about Windows, the software.
Yes. Shall we talk about the history of the window first, or do you want to talk about Microsoft first?
Let's go with Windows. The window, the bit of glass in the wall. Let's go with that first.
Okay.
Because that's what I instantly associate.
So basically, the window was essentially a hole in the wall that you could see out of.
Yes, basically. That's the end of our information. Good night.
So the first sort of windows were holes. But then they started to put shutters up, and we still have shutters today. I mean, I love it when you go abroad, and they've got those button-operated shutters. They're sort of metal, and they clank down.
Oh yes, I know.
And they've got little slits in them to let the light in, unless you push the button extra, and then they sort of clam up. And become
I automatically go towards the sort of the wooden shutters in France and Austria and places like that.
Yeah, the Louvre shutters.
That's the ones. But yes, essentially, whether you put glass in it, whether you put shutters over them, whether you cover them in whatever you cover them in, a window, I mean, we seem to be quoting ancient Egypt an awful lot recently. I don't think ancient Egypt necessarily invented everything. It's just that they're really old, so that if they had them, that's one of the earliest examples we have. There are examples of windows in ancient Egyptian architecture, not in the pyramids. I found one source that said, no, of course there aren't windows in the pyramids. Everyone's dead. They don't need them. But in general architecture, they had holes in the walls. They had holes in the ceilings to sort of let light through. I love this fact. The etymology of the word window, it comes from an Old Norse word, two words put together, vindra, meaning wind, and auga, meaning eye.
Oh, okay.
So a window is a wind eye. Isn't that lovely?
They do say that the eyes are the windows of the soul, don't they?
They do indeed, yeah.
So eyes and windows kind of, I guess, yeah.
So they're there to let the wind through. They're there to ventilate. They're there to let light in. They're there to let maybe smoke out if you're in an old Iron Age roundhouse and you've got a fire in the centre and you've got smoke billowing all over the place. Might be useful to have a little hatch in the roof you could open to...
Yes. That's more of a skylight there, really, isn't it?
Well, it is and it isn't. So I had a look around. You sort of think of a window. You think a window is a fairly easy thing to define, wouldn't you?
Yes.
But it applies to an awful lot of things. I looked on the Merriam-Webster dictionary. A window is an opening, especially in the wall of a building, for admission of light and air that is usually closed by casements or sashes containing transparent material such as glass and capable of being opened and shut.
Okay.
That sounds like a window, doesn't it? That sounds like the definition of a window.
Like a window.
I then went and looked on a particularly popular online encyclopedia website, and it listed all the different types of windows. Probably not all the types of windows, but I'm going to take a deep breath and this is one of the worst written sentences I've ever seen in my life.
Come on, we're voiceovers. We've read worse sentences than this.
Types of window include the eyebrow window, fixed window, hexagonal window, single and double hung sash window, horizontal sliding sash window, casement window, awning window, hopper window, tilt and slide window, open door size window, tilt and turn window, transform window, sidelight window, don't know what that is, Jalouse or louvered window, clerestory window, lancet window, skylight, roof window, roof lantern, bay window, oriental window, thermal or Doclosian window, picture window, rose window, emergency exit window, stained glass window, French window, panel window, double triple paned windows, and witch windows.
You didn't mention bay windows.
I did, but I did it too fast.
Wow.
So there's quite a lot of windows.
That's a lot of windows.
So in that are skylights and things.
Yes.
So big generic term that applies to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, okay. We talked about sort of covering the window up, unless it's a window being a place to let light in.
Yes.
Often that didn't necessarily mean that you were able to see out of it.
Okay.
So, for example, you would cover your window in sort of animal skin, parchment, very thin layer of parchment, so that you would get light.
Yeah.
So it would be translucent,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't be transparent.
Okay, fine. That's kind of the forerunner of frosted glass windows, isn't it? You have,
I guess, yes.
You have frosted or patterned windows in your bathroom, for instance, so that you can get the light in, but it's not clear enough for people to see.
Yes, they also used to use shavings of animal horn.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So that was another way of getting light without being able to see through.
Yes, I mean, if you don't fill them with something, they're just a hole in the wall. It could get a bit drafty, could get wet when it rains.
That's true. So when did glass windows come in?
The glass windows first came up with, let's all say it together now, 1, 2, 3, the
Egyptians.
Romans.
Oh, interesting.
It was the Romans this time.
Was it the Romans? Okay.
So the Romans started using glass. They had a process by which they blew some glass. You get molten glass on the end of a blowpipe.
Yeah.
They blew it into a sort of a cylindrical jar shape, really.
Right. Okay.
And then they just squashed it flat into a small pane. So sort of a small square, 5-inch pane of glass.
Yeah.
And they embedded those into the wall or into woodwork or whatever. And so Romans.
Well done, the Romans. Well, let's move it right along then from the history of windows to window cleaning.
Okay, yes, all right.
So cleaning a window of a house is quite easy because houses aren't that high.
Sure.
So you just kind of climb out of a window or sit in a window and just sort of do the outside.
Yeah.
Or you get a ladder and do the outside, which is pretty straightforward. That's a bit trickier when you do things like multi-storey buildings.
Yes.
So they have these now glass curtain walls, which are they are windows, but they're sort of, looks like a whole load of glass around the building.
Yes, okay. So sort of I'm thinking of the modern office buildings in London.
Yes, I mean...
Are they really windows or is the entire thing just made of glass?
Exactly. I mean, it's like a glass cladding. So,
yes.
And that started in about 1885 in Chicago.
Oh, really?
There was the Home Insurance Building in Chicago, which was 138 feet high and 10 stories. And cleaning the windows on that was quite interesting. They would basically, when they built the building, they would put like eye holes in sort of metal eyes in the building so that people could strap themselves to the outside of the building and clean the windows that way. And then cleaners wore a belt like an electrical lineman, and they would climb out of the window and attach each end of the belt to the hooks. And then they would like lean back against the belt with their toes on their ledges.
Yeah.
It's very labour intensive and difficult.
And scary.
And very scary. Then they sort of thought, actually, we don't have to go out of the window. We can go off the roof.
Yes.
And going off the roof is quite interesting because they call that abseiling.
Yes.
And although that was used back in 1876, actually one of the things that promoted that way of cleaning windows was the Vietnam War.
Really? How so?
because people were used to jumping out of helicopters.
Oh, you're kidding.
So people were trained to like get a hold of a rope and abseil out of a helicopter to get to the ground quickly.
Yeah.
And vets returning from Vietnam used these systems and they adapted them to the window cleaning industry.
So you had an awful lot of window cleaners who were Vietnam veterans.
Yes.
How interesting. Never realised
Because
that.
they had no fear of heights,
Yeah.
and it's a good job.
Yeah.
And they would get out with their squeegee.
Yeah.
Talking of squeegees, actually, they go back to the Middle Ages.
Do they?
There was a thing called a squilgee,
Okay.
which was used by fishermen to scrape fish guts from the boat decks.
Brilliant.
But then somebody invented the Chicago squeegee,
Ooh.
which was a pretty awful thing. It was heavy and cumbersome, and it had like 12 screws holding the whole thing together.
Okay.
But then an Italian immigrant to America, a guy called Ettore Steccione, who invented a lightweight brass squeegee.
Right.
And it's so efficient that it's still basically the same as the one that he invented in 1936.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And in fact, the Steccione company still makes and manufactures window cleaning equipment.
Really?
Yeah.
Whenever I think of someone cleaning the windows on an office block, I think of those cradles that
Yes.
they're sort of mounted to the side of the building and slowly winch you down and then carry you left and right.
Yes, they have like either tracks or fixed telescopic units.
That's right, yeah.
Nowhere are those more useful than at one of the highest buildings in the world. In fact, the highest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa.
Yes, the hotel in Dubai.
Yes. So that's 2,700 feet high, roughly. And it features 24,500 windows.
Good grief.
It's about 1.3 million square feet of glass.
Well, that's an ongoing job, isn't it?
To clean those windows, there are 18 permanently installed tracked and fixed telescopic maintenance units.
Right.
There's a group of 36 people who have to wear protective clothing resembling moon suits.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, you're in Dubai, you're on a reflective surface in air, and it gets really, really, really hot.
Yeah,
so
of
they wear
course.
these suits which resemble moon suits to shield them from that intense heat, which can get up to like 50 degrees centigrade.
Wow.
And they still use like soap and squeegees to do the work. But there are all sorts of interesting windows. I mean, not just on buildings. There are windows everywhere.
You get them in your car?
Yep, car windows. Well, there's two different sorts of glass in cars generally. There's laminated and safety glass.
Okay.
So safety glass is, when you smash at the side window of a car, you get those tiny little bits of glass that look ever so pretty.
Yes.
But when it falls out, there are no sharp edges on it. It doesn't actually cut you.
Oh, I see what you mean. It sort of crumbles away.
Yeah, exactly. The plan is that if something goes through a window in a car from the side, it's not going to rip your face up.
I see.
Because the glass isn't sharp.
Right.
Each individual shard is not sharp.
Okay.
Whereas the front windscreen, you really want it to be a bit more. I mean, if a stone hits that and it goes immediately opaque,
Yes,
that would be a bad thing. So you want that to be what's called a laminated glass.
Right.
So that's 2 or sometimes 3 sheets of glass with like a plastic double-sided sheet between the 2 bits of glass that hold it together. And so if something tries to smack that piece of glass, it won't break.
Right, I see.
It'll crack.
Yeah.
But it won't actually fall into different pieces.
Right.
So that's why the side windows of cars are usually safety glasses, because if you're in a situation where you need to get out of the car, you need a window that you can smash fairly easily.
Yes, you need to break out of, don't you? Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you're up at sort of 35,000 feet, you don't really want a window that's going to.
You really don't.
So generally, the windows in aeroplanes are triple glazed.
Right.
And they're not glass at all. They're polycarbonate.
Okay.
And have you ever noticed there's a little hole in an aeroplane window?
No.
Have you not?
No.
Next time you get in an aeroplane, have a look at the window and you'll see there's a tiny little hole, like a pinhole, usually at the bottom. And that's to aid with pressurization equalization.
Oh, right. Okay.
So what you don't want is, like, as the plane goes up, you definitely don't want the windows being sucked out of the aeroplane.
No, I mean, I could tell you that.
But they do make an aeroplane a lot heavier.
Right.
So technically, if you had an aeroplane without windows, like, for example, a cargo plane, is significantly lighter
Oh, I see.
than a passenger plane because the passengers want to see out and see what's going on.
Yes, of course. Cargo doesn't have that preference.
No, exactly. Exactly. I mean, apart from at the front.
Yeah, that's quite important.
Yes. There are companies now that are looking at replacing the windows in aeroplanes with screens.
Oh, what, like TV screens with a camera on the outside showing you what you would be looking at if you had a window?
Exactly. Exactly. They weigh a lot less.
Yeah.
Also, they don't have to do the structural work on the plane.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be oval. Because on an aeroplane window, they're usually oval because they tried square windows and there were stress cracks at the corners.
Oh, I see.
So that's why you'll never see square windows
Is that right?
on a modern aeroplane.
Huh.
There's a company at the moment which is working on screens, and not just like a screen per window, but a screen going down the whole length of the aeroplane and also the whole roof.
Oh, wow.
So when you're sitting down, it basically looks like you're sitting in a seat in the sky.
That's fantastic.
And they've got like cameras on the wings.
Okay, I kind of want to try that.
Yeah, I'll put a picture in the show notes. It does look incredible. I would be very happy doing that.
Yeah. I had a quick look at a particular type of window. I was reminded of a fact, completely unrelated to this, but a fact that a friend of mine, one of our dear Factoralites, shared with me a little while ago. I just never realised it before. It's something I've walked past so frequently, but had never considered the origin of. You know, when you walk past an old pub, for instance, or an old Victorian shop window, the panes of glass are square or rectangular in a wooden framework, and every now and then one of them has a sort of a circular dimple in the middle of it.
Yes, of course. I thought that was, you talk about the Romans blowing glass and then flattening
yes.
jars. I thought that was like that.
It's very similar to that. So they just made a sort of a cylindrical jar shape, cut it off the piece of equipment they were using to make it, and squashed it flat. These things, these bullseyes, this is a type of glass making called crown glass, which first came into prominence in Europe in the 14th century, was particularly popular in England in the 1800s, which is why you sort of see it on a lot of buildings of that era. So essentially you blow a bit of glass into a sort of a bowl shape, and then you spin the rod, the blowpipe, which is called a pontil apparently. You spin it really fast, and centrifugal force makes that bowl of molten glass flatten and widen into a disc.
Okay.
We'll put a link to a video of this up on the show notes.
Oh, cool.
So yes, they just spin it into a disc. And these things can be quite big. They can be made up to 5 or 6 feet in diameter, this disc of glass. And then they cool it, and then they detach the blowpipe. But what you end up with in the middle is a little scar where the blowpipe was attached and where the blowing first occurred.
Yes.
So because of the way this thing was made, because the centrifugal force stretches it out, the edges of the glass are thinner and more transparent and better quality. So you would cut bits of that off to make glass for expensive windows, for, sort of stately homes. You think of a stately home or a church, it has lots of small diamonds or rectangles of glass in a lead framework. So those are the cut-offs from the edge of the glass. And towards the centre, the glass is thicker, not as clear, it's a little bit bobbly. So that would be used for cheaper windows in public buildings, such as pubs. So if you look at the front of a pub dating from 16 to 1800 odd, you have several panes of glass that are quite good quality, and then there's just that one random one in the middle that has the lump of circular blobby glass on it.
Right.
And those are called bullseyes. But I've walked past 100 pubs like that, and I've never even stopped to think about why that was the case. And
yes.
Then,
How fascinating. There's a shop in central London which sells furniture, which has the most unusual windows that you've ever seen.
Okay.
It's on Tottenham Court Road.
Yeah.
And it's a shop called Heels.
I know it, yes.
And if you look at the shop windows of Heels, they're sort of J-shaped.
Oh.
And the reason that they're J-shaped is so that there is no reflection coming from the street. So it looks like you're looking straight into the showroom.
Oh, how wonderful.
So they're specially made just for Heels.
How interesting.
This sort of combining lots of small pieces of glass into one large piece is kind of the thing behind churches. There are some amazing stained glass windows in
Yes.
the world, which I didn't look at all into.
I did a little bit of a look. So there are a few different ways of making the glass for stained glass windows. One is the thing I just described, crown glass. Another one is you can blow a large cylinder of glass, cut down the middle, and flatten it out to make a sheet. And then you just cut bits off that and put them into place.
I guess you add sort of various different minerals, like
Yeah.
something that would make the glass green or brown or...
That's
yellow.
it. So they put metal oxide powder or really, really small metal filings into the glass whilst it's still molten,
Yeah.
so that melts in and lends its colour to it. And they use different metallic oxides to make different colours. So if you add a bit of copper, it can make a sort of a bluey green colour. If you add cobalt, it'll make a darker blue. And apparently, if you put gold oxide into molten glass, it makes it dark red or violet.
Oh, okay.
And traditionally, thinking of the pictures depicted in a stained glass window, we've talked on our previous episodes about the fact that red cloth and purple cloth was always really expensive to make because
Yes.
it was harder to create the dye.
Yeah.
So how perfect that depicting that in stained glass is also really expensive because you
Requires
have to use
gold.
gold oxide.
Yes.
Isn't that great?
Wow.
Stained glass windows have been around for a very long time. I found out that the oldest stained glass window is probably from a cathedral in Bavaria in Germany called the Augsburg Cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit of stained glass window in there which dates back to around 1065.
Golly.
It's a bit dull. It's mainly yellow. Not an awful lot of colour in it, but still.
But
you know,
see, the thing is, it may have been colourful at one point.
it may well have been and then faded off. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The oldest one in the UK is in Canterbury Cathedral.
Uh-huh.
And this bit of stained glass window was made around 1130, and that's still rather colourful. The biggest one, we usually have a little Guinness World Record bit at the end,
Yes.
but I'm throwing these in here because they're contextual.
Yes.
The biggest stained glass window in the world is in a place in America called Justice, Illinois, and it's in a chapel at the Resurrection Cemetery. And this stained glass window, goodness me, it's 100 feet wide and 40 feet high.
Blimey.
It's an entire wall of this building.
What's it depicting?
Jesus. It's in a
Okay.
church, and it's just massive. I sort of looked at a photo of it and I thought, oh, that's a nice stained glass window. It's got all the little rectangular panels,
Yeah.
and that's lovely. And then you zoomed in a bit, and there was a couple standing within one of these rectangular panes of glass.
Wow.
It's huge.
That's incredible.
We'll put a photo up on the Factoraly.com website.
Oh, fantastic. We did say at the beginning that we had trouble researching this without coming across Microsoft.
Yes.
And I don't think we need to tell people lots and lots about... I mean, everybody uses Microsoft. 70% of the world uses a Microsoft product.
Yes. I think most of you know what Windows is.
Yes, yes. But things that you may not know, I mean, you know the startup sound.
Ding, 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 ding.
When they started Windows 3.1, it was a pretty awful startup sound. So in 1994, they sort of thought, rather than software engineers, maybe we should have a musician have a crack at this.
Great idea.
So they thought, who's like an innovative musician that we could get to do the Microsoft sound? And given
Yeah.
that they're Microsoft, they have lots of money.
Sure, yes.
So they asked Brian Eno.
No way.
So Brian Eno came up with that first sound.
Did he really?
for Windows 95, yeah. It was about 7 seconds, which is twice as long as the brief. But it's such an iconic sonic logo.
I remember reading a little while ago about smart windows.
Oh, yes.
I tried to do some in-depth research into this, and it's just too confusing, so I stopped. But essentially, smart windows, there are buildings these days where the windows are tinted in reaction to something, either temperature or an electric pulse or whatever.
Yeah.
So you could be looking out of a perfectly clear window, and as the day goes on and the sun changes angle and it gets a bit hot, these windows will actually take a trigger from that temperature and do some kind of magic to make them tinted. Whether that's...
Yes.
There are different methods. You can have a sheet of lining in between the panes of glass that is electronically triggered. You can get some windows that have liquid crystals inside, which are aligned in a certain way when they're triggered, and therefore they make the glass look frosted.
They use polarization, I think, don't they?
That as well.
They polarize one way to make them clear, and then they polarize in sort of 90 degrees.
Yes, that
which makes them
exists as
go-
well. You can have windows which are clear when you're looking out of them from one angle, but they're opaque from another angle. There's a block of flats near the Tate Modern in London that uses these windows so that the people inside can look out through the windows and enjoy the lovely views of the Thames, but the people down on street level outside, when they look up, because of that polarization, the glass is opaque, so they can't see in.
Aha!
You can get these things to be triggered by an electric switch. You can just stand there and flip a switch and decide whether your windows are see-through or not.
Well, they have those in offices now, don't they? So like a security, they used to have like Venetian blinds.
Oh, yes.
in offices, and now they have a button that you
That's
press,
right.
and it opaques the window so that you don't actually see what's going on inside the office.
Isn't that clever?
And in fact, those windows that you're talking about that tint, they use those on modern aeroplanes as well. So when you're rather than having like a blind that comes down, you press a button.
Oh, I see.
And the window goes dark.
Isn't that clever?
Mm.
So I mentioned earlier on how the word window comes from an old Norse word meaning wind eye.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a Latin word for windows, which some... You've seen it already.
No, I haven't seen it. I just know about fenestration and defenestration.
You know where we're going.
Yeah.
So the Latin for window is fenestra.
Yes.
And some other European languages have incorporated that to use as the word for window. So Sweden and Germany, their words for window are based on fenestra. And the most interesting thing I know about fenestra is the fact that there was an event called the Second Defenestration of Prague in 1618.
Yes.
And to defenestrate means to chuck someone or something out of a window. Defenestra.
Yes.
And apparently this was a relatively common practice
No,
in
absolutely.
Prague.
We did it in the UK as well.
Oh, we've done it all over the place.
Yes.
They did it in Die Hard, But yes, there was a particular event, the Second Defenestration of Prague, can't remember when the first one was, happened in Prague Castle in 1618 during the Bohemian Revolt. And 3 chaps were promptly defenestrated, and that's what started the 30-Year War, apparently.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Quite a simple action leading to quite a large chunk of history. There's a wonderful report talking about this event, and it says it was done in good Bohemian style.
Okay.
As if there's a Bohemian way to chuck someone out of a window, I don't know.
Yes.
But yes, defenestration, one of my favourite words.
Yes. One of my favourite country and western songs is called Pick a Window, Jim, You're Leaving.
Wow, Jim's about to get defenestrated.
He certainly is. Well, that's all the facts I've got on Windows.
Yes, I think we're pretty much done, actually. I expect there are many, many more things to talk about, but those are our select few findings for you.
Yes.
You're welcome. So if you've enjoyed listening to us rabbiting on about Windows, there's plenty more where that came from, and there are various things that you can do to keep in touch with us.
There are. You can like us. You can subscribe. You probably are already subscribed.
Let's hope so.
You can definitely tell your friends.
Yes.
Or you can just be nice. Give us a fantastic 5-star review.
Thank you so much for listening to another fun-filled episode of Factoraly. We'll see you again soon.
That would be lovely.
Bye for now.
Au revoir.